The shuttle bucked as it broke through Varnax 7's turbulent upper atmosphere. Dane Rourke sat in the rear, silent, motionless. Around him, aliens of every shape muttered in a dozen tongues, checking gear, loading simulation rounds, boasting about previous trials. Rourke just watched. Outside the viewport, the jungle moon sprawled like a living organism, thick, dark green veins winding through black ridgelines. Lightning forked silently across the canopy. It didn't welcome visitors. "Touchdown in 2!" barked a gravel-throated Varnari sergeant, scales glinting blue under the cabin lights. "Watch your footing. Jungle's alive. Terrain's real. Ammo's not." That was half a lie. Some ammo would be real soon. As the ramp hissed open, humid air punched them in the face. Rourke stepped out last, boots sinking slightly into the moss-thick ground. The coalition team's commander, a rigid four-eyed Solari named Vec, waved the group into formation. "Welcome to the sniper trials," Vec said. "This moon's been untouched for decades. Perfect terrain. Perfect conditions. No satellites. No interference. Just you and your rifle. And the enemy. Simulated, of course." A few snickered. Someone glanced at Rourke. "That the human?" whispered a sharp-toothed Drexer. "Thought he'd be taller. Thought he'd be more armed," added a lean insectoid with optical visor extensions. Rourke didn't answer. He didn't need to. Instead, he watched the tree line. 30 meters out, the vegetation shifted slightly, too subtle for most to notice. The breeze didn't match the movement. Something was out there. Something not part of the trials. Hours later, the team split into squads. Vec wanted cross-species cooperation. Rourke got placed with a duo of bored Solari twins and a jittery anchor scout. They called themselves Team 5. They called him Rookie. Rourke let it pass. They moved slowly through the underbrush. The jungle was a maze, dense, alive, and layered. Heat shimmered off exposed rock. Bugs hummed like turbines. Tree roots coiled like tripwires. Through his scope, Rourke noticed strange things: clipped vines with cauterized ends, patterns in the lichen, unusually fresh soil in a prone position. Sniper nest. Abandoned, but recent. "Break here," the scout said, panting. "We're ahead on our sector. Time to hydrate." Rourke didn't sit. He adjusted his rifle strap and stepped away, scanning the ridgeline. The light bent strangely against one of the rocks, a shimmer, a flicker, a momentary ghost of distortion. His finger tapped the trigger guard out of reflex. Then a crack. The anchor's head snapped sideways. A second later, the report echoed, a high-caliber, subsonic round. Blood painted the moss red. The twins froze, screaming. One darted behind a log. The other took a round through the chest mid-step. Rourke hit the ground, rolled to cover, and didn't scream. He moved slow, deliberate, like shifting water. 3 shots. 2 kills. No simulation tag. These were live rounds. Coalition protocol demanded he call it in. But the comms crackled with static, sabotaged or jammed. Either way, they were alone. Rourke's breathing slowed. He scanned the treeline again. Another flicker. A leaf twitched the wrong way. He raised his rifle. Didn't fire. Waited. Another flicker. This time, he squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out like punctuation. A moment later, a body slumped from the high ridge, reptilian, armored, unmistakably Vrexy. It wasn't a trial. It was a hunt. He moved fast after that, stripping gear from his fallen comrades, disabling coalition ID tags, wiping the scene clean. The Vrexy corpse was old school, hand-scribed armor, custom-etched scope, no tracker, no coalition insignia. Mercenary? Rebel? Ghost? He pocketed the shell casing. Vrexy glyphs ran in a spiral. Honor is in the unseen kill. Rourke's jaw tightened. Behind him, a low buzz. Not mechanical. Organic. A voice, distorted, crackling over an intercepted frequency. "He walks like prey," it said in Vrexy dialect. but maps the jungle with his eyes. He is no cub. Rourke crouched, silently adjusted his rear sight, and smiled without humor. They were watching. That was fine. He was watching too. Hours passed. He moved independently now, ignoring coalition boundaries, tracking the snipers through their own patterns. They weren't sloppy, but they weren't him. He set up in an abandoned satellite dish, collapsed years ago into vines. From there, he had range on 3 approach points. He waited. Stilled his heartbeat. Focused his breath until the world narrowed to the scope's reticle. A shadow moved low, too methodical for an animal. He didn't pull the trigger. Instead, he whispered. "Send another," he said low and cold. "Let's see if they hunt better in pairs." At the coalition base, Commander Vec reviewed the feed from Rourke's helmet. Most of it was static. Then came the kill shot, the Vrexy falling from the ridge. "Impossible," Vec muttered. "There are no Vrexy. They surrendered decades ago." A junior officer entered, pale green skin twitching. "Sir? We just lost contact with teams 3 and 7. No pings. No biometrics." Vec's eyes narrowed. He tapped into the last known data packet. The screen showed a single heat signature moving through the jungle, calm, methodical. The human. The rookie. Back in the field, Rourke adjusted his position. Rain began to fall in steady sheets, muting sound, cooling the air. Perfect. Another movement. Another ghost. He fired once. Another Vrexy died without fanfare. As he ejected the casing, he glanced at the trees. "They think I'm just starting," he murmured. "But I've been doing this since they went into hiding." He reloaded. Stood. And disappeared into the jungle without a sound. Rourke moved through the jungle like it was home. Not because he'd trained here, no one had, but because he understood environments made to kill. You don't beat them. You learn to breathe with them. The canopy above groaned as wind pressed through the trees, disguising his footfalls. He crouched beneath a rotting root bridge and assembled his Rio rifle. Not the simulation-issued gear the Coalition provided, but a matte black bolt action with custom stabilizers and a hand-built scope tuned to his heartbeat. He exhaled once. The silence welcomed him. A rustling behind. Too soft for a beast. He didn't spin. Didn't raise his weapon. Instead, he lifted a pocket mirror, tilted it an inch. Reflection caught a shape, a crouched Vrexy, almost invisible under adaptive mesh, lining up a shot with ritualistic precision. Rourke set a bait. He rolled his helmet 2 meters to the right, just visible through the brush. It rocked slightly on a root, looking like a head on the move. He waited. The Vrexy fired. Rourke didn't flinch. Just pivoted to the left and fired once, straight through the shooter's right eye. The alien's body hit the jungle floor with a wet thud. He moved fast, stripped the body of intel. The rifle was antique yet immaculate. The ammunition hand-loaded. This wasn't some desperate rebel. These were professionals. Ghosts. The glyphs on this one's belt read, "Strike unseen, leave no breath behind." Rourke tucked it away. Another ritual to catalog. By noon, the heat returned. The rain was gone, replaced by the sharp scent of scorched leaves and ozone. Rourke set a trap. In a moss crater formed by a decades-old impact, he placed a thermal emitter tuned to mimic a humanoid resting posture. Next to it, he laid a Coalition standard rifle, half buried in dirt. Wounded. Vulnerable. Bait. Then he circled wide and found cover in an elevated blind, thick branches, low angle, east-facing light. The enemy would have to cross 3 open pockets to investigate. Time passed. Then movement, subtle, disciplined. A Vrexy sniper emerged, crawling low, lens glint barely visible. He didn't rush. Rourke waited until the alien settled into his scope, measuring the thermal reading, perhaps even wondering why it hadn't shifted at all. Then Rourke fired, not at the head, but at the chest. A dead center shot. Clean. Final. He exhaled and leaned back against the trunk. This made 2 confirmed kills today. 3 overall. Too clean. Too easy. They were testing him now. A tone crackled in his earpiece. Coalition frequency. Open channel. Team 5, status update. Came Vex's clipped voice. Rourke, respond. He ignored it. Then another voice bled into the channel, staticky, cold. Not coalition. You move well, human. For prey. Rourke didn't speak. He just listened. We know your record. Earth calls you a ghost. We study ghosts. We bury them. The transmission cut out. Rourke lowered the earpiece mic, muttered, Good luck burying what you can't see coming. That night, he made camp beneath a thick overhang of root bark and vine. No fire. No noise. Just low-calorie nutrient strips and silence. Sleep didn't come easy. He let it come in controlled microcycles, 10 minutes at a time, body upright, rifle resting across his knees. In the third cycle, he snapped awake. A vibration. Barely there. He reached for the scope and scanned. At 400 meters, nestled into the cliffside, a single red dot shimmered briefly. A scope glint. Of Rexy's spotter? Or the leader? He waited. No movement. He crawled backward, covered his trail with water-soaked moss, and relocated to higher ground. The next encounter came at dawn. This one wasn't a sniper. It was a trap. He'd stepped into a valley cut between two jagged stone walls. Too symmetrical. Too clean. The ground was covered in loose gravel, ideal for footstep tracking. Halfway through, his gut twisted. He dived left just as two shots rang out from opposite angles, crossfire formation. He landed hard behind a thick fern, heart pounding, dust in his mouth. The Vrexy had calculated well. But not perfectly. He used his mirror trick again, drawing fire at a false reflection he positioned across the ridge. When one of them flinched and adjusted position, he spotted the movement. Shot. Hit. Down. The other panicked, rare for a Vrexy, and moved to higher ground. Rourke gave chase, not through speed but through angles. He cut upwind, gained elevation, circled silently. 3 minutes later, the second sniper's head was visible above a jagged log, scanning in the wrong direction. Rourke fired once. Silence returned. By midday, his count was 5. 5 Vrexy snipers. Each kill was precise. Not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. He wasn't here to win medals. He was here to survive, and to send a message. Back at Coalition HQ, Vex stared at the latest terrain feed. The jungle's heat signatures were chaotic, distorted by a growing ion storm, but 5 cold bodies were visible now. All Vrexy. All marked cleanly. And 1 human signature, never still for more than 10 seconds. He's doing it, whispered the junior officer. He's killing them one by one. Vec didn't reply. He just stared. Later that night, Rourke carved another mark into his stock. Silent tally, old habit. Not to count kills. To count warnings. They kept coming. But so would he. The jungle had gone quiet again. Rourke crouched beneath a stone ledge, checking wind direction with a fingertip to the air. A slight breeze. Just enough. He shifted the lens on his scope by a 1/4 degree. The clearing below was empty, but he wasn't watching the clearing. He was watching the reflection of the ridge above it. 3 cold scales had entered the zone. Vrexy elites. No chatter, no wasted movement, no patterns to track. Just silence and skill. Exactly how he would have done it. Which is why he already had a plan. Hours earlier, he'd mapped out the kill zone, an abandoned mining relay tower built into a natural sinkhole. Cracked metal supports still jutted through the canopy, angled like broken ribs. He'd rigged 3 pressure sensors, 1 beneath a moss patch, 1 behind a false root, and 1 just under a metal fragment he knew would draw a cautious step. He'd also prepared echo lures, small frequency emitters tuned to coalition heartbeat profiles. He placed them high in the trees. Any hunter using thermal or acoustic trace would pick them up as human signatures. Bait. The Vrexy came and staggered. The first moved like smoke, crawling into the relay perimeter with his rifle folded on his back. He circled wide, tracing a spiral toward the source. Exactly what Rourke wanted. When the cold scale hit the moss patch, it clicked. Not a trap, just a signal. Rourke fired from a concealed dip 70 meters away. The round punched clean through the skull from a downward angle. 30 seconds later, another ripple, south ridge. Rourke repositioned fast. His previous shot had been suppressed but not silent. The others would triangulate quickly. He slipped down a vine-covered slope and slid beneath the outer hull of the relay's broken generator pod. From here, he had a clear line to the second cold scale. This one was smarter, using mirrors and distance to probe for movement. He paused often, scanning irregularly. Rourke waited. Wind shifted slightly, carrying a faint vibration from the Vrexy's armor, woven bone plates, not metal. Almost silent. But not perfect. He aimed at the reflection in a pool of stagnant water just ahead of the Vrexy's path. A ripple gave the position away. One shot. The second cold scale dropped, twitching once before going still. That left one. And the third was different. No rush. No hunt. Just waiting. Rourke backed out of the relay zone and climbed. He scaled a twisted iron beam until he was 30 feet up, exposed to wind and wide open sky. From there, the entire jungle stretched below in waves of green shadow. He switched to low-sensitivity thermal. One brief flicker, far west. Could be him. Could be bait. He watched. 10 minutes passed. A bird landed on a branch 2 meters from his rifle. Sat there, blinking, unafraid. That's when he knew the jungle was too quiet again. He turned slowly. Nothing. But then, just as his rifle shifted. Ping. A glint. Just for a second. The barest flash of light. He rolled. The shot rang out, metal shrieking as it glanced off the beam behind him. A perfect headshot if he'd been still. The cold scale had flanked him entirely, used the tower as a trap. That deserved respect. But Rourke wasn't rattled. He kicked loose a flash pellet from his thigh and rolled it down the beam. It went off in a muted burst, just enough light to reveal outlines. There. He fired twice. One missed, barely. The second struck armor, but not fatal. The cold scale dropped and vanished again, bleeding. Rourke gave chase. No long-range shots. No time. He descended fast, using metal rungs from the broken tower. One snapped under his weight, but he landed hard, knees bending to absorb the hit. He moved through the underbrush, following small dots of green-black blood, Vrexy ichor. It led to a ravine carved by decades of acidic rainfall. He slowed. Footprints ended. He turned, instinct rising. Too late. A figure crashed into him from behind, claws extended, snarling through a rebreather. They hit the mud, rolled twice. Rourke slammed an elbow into the Vrexy's side, breaking contact, and brought up a compact knife. The cold scale struck back, knocking it free. They circled. This wasn't a sniper kill. This was survival. You're not prey. The cold scale rasped, voice like sand dragged over stone. Never was, Rourke said, breathing steady. The Vrexy lunged. Rourke sidestepped, seized the enemy's arm, twisted, and drove his shoulder into the alien's gut, sending them both into the ravine's shallow water. The Vrexy tried to rise. Rourke leveled his sidearm, pressed the muzzle beneath the chin ridge, and fired. It was over in 1 second. He stood in the water, drenched, breathing hard. Then silence again. But it felt different now. The jungle no longer watched. Later, Rourke returned to the relay tower and buried the 3 Vrexy bodies under separate cairns, marking them with stones and sticks. He didn't do it for them. He did it to remember what this had become. Not a trial. Not even war. A purge. At Coalition HQ, Commander Vec reviewed the incoming reports. 3 more dead Vrexy. All neutralized by 1 man. A human. The rookie. His comm officer looked up, pale. Sir, if this is war, we need to call reinforcements. Vex shook his head slowly. No, he said. We need to ask ourselves who set this up. Then he leaned closer to the screen, staring at Rourke's still image frozen mid-kill. And what Earth just sent us? Dawn rose behind smoke-colored clouds. A radiation storm brewed over the western ridge, sweeping pulses through the ionosphere. Comms failed across all frequencies. No drones. No uplink. Just static and wind. Exactly how Rourke wanted it. He crouched near the ruin of an old relay beacon, stripped to essential gear. His scope had been recalibrated to visual light only. No heat, no sound detection. Just eyes. His and the enemy's. There was only one left. Sharvek. The Vrexy commander. Leader of the Cold Scales. The one who had turned a sniper trial into a graveyard. Rourke stood, slung his rifle over his back, and began the final hunt. The jungle had shifted. No animals. No motion. The storm above pressed down like a lid. Rourke tracked recent movement. Twigs snapped at deliberate intervals, a bent reed held open with twine. These weren't mistakes. These were messages. Signals. I'm waiting. He moved slower now, cutting wide arcs through the undergrowth, checking elevation and sun angle every few minutes. His mind wasn't on the kill. It was on the approach. 2 hours later, he found the battlefield. A natural amphitheater, steep cliffs on both sides, with a bone-dry riverbed curling through it like a scar. Overhead, the clouds opened slightly, letting in a harsh blue-gray light. Sharvek had chosen it for symmetry. For finality. At the far end stood the Vrexy commander. Armor dull, ceremonial cape torn at the edge. He carried a long-barreled rifle slung low and held a single curved blade in one clawed hand. Rourke didn't reach for his weapon. He stepped into the open. Wind howled between them. Sharvek spoke first. You killed them clean, he said, voice rough but measured. Cold Scales don't die easily. Rourke's reply was calm. Then they should have aimed better. The Vrexy tilted his head. Earth taught you that confidence? No. Earth taught me patience. They stood there, motionless. Then, Sharvek tossed something across the ravine. It hit the dust with a dull clink. A bullet. Rourke picked it up. Vrexy etching red, one shot. One truth. He slid it into his pocket. They moved. Both dropped to prone in a flash and crawled opposite directions. Rourke went low into the dry creek, letting the rock shield his profile. Sharvek climbed higher, using the cliff edge for cover. A perfect duel, elevation against concealment. Rourke paused at a fallen boulder, unslung his rifle, checked wind again. It had shifted. He circled back toward a patch of sand finer than the rest. Underneath was a hollow spot. He'd scouted it days ago. He set up behind it, rifle steady on a curved root. 10 seconds. Breathe. Aim. No sign. He scanned the cliff. A flicker of fabric near a lichen-covered rock. Rourke adjusted his angle, accounting for light, wind, potential movement. He didn't shoot. Sharvek was too experienced to be caught on the first scan. This was a game of timing. Then thump. A sound behind. Decoy? No. Rockfall likely triggered. He shifted slightly, just enough. And the shot came. A perfect trace grazed his left shoulder, slicing through cloth and flesh. He rolled backward, gritting his teeth. Bleeding. Not badly. But enough. He exhaled. You blinked, he muttered. Sharvek's shot had revealed his angle. Not exactly. But enough. Rourke pivoted, dragging his rifle to a second position, crawling over splintered bark. He took a deep breath and held it. Then fired. The round struck stone, throwing a fist of dust into the air. No cry. No body. But a shadow broke. He tracked it with his eyes. Sharvek had moved downhill, fast, weaving through brush. Rourke followed. Close combat now. He reached the cliffside minutes later, keeping low. Then he saw the trail, light drag marks from boots, a smear of green blood. He moved up. Sharvek was waiting. The Vrexy rose from a crouch with a blade in hand and lunged. Rourke sidestepped, ducked low, and drove his shoulder into the alien's midsection, forcing him back. The blade sliced Rourke's thigh. He didn't scream. He grabbed the Vrexy's wrist, twisted hard, forcing the blade down. Sharvek hissed. "You fight like an animal," the alien growled. "No," Rourke said, pushing the barrel of his sidearm under the alien's chin. "I fight to end it." Sharvek froze, breathing heavy, but didn't flinch. Rourke paused, finger on the trigger, and didn't pull it. Instead, he spoke. "You had skill," he said. "But you turned this into a game. You sent killers after rookies. You buried honor the moment you pulled real steel." Sharvek stared. "So finish it." Rourke lowered the weapon. "I already did." He turned, limping slightly, and left the Vrexy kneeling in the dirt. Alive. Defeated. By the time he reached the Coalition base, the storm had broken. Comms came online. Medics swarmed him, shouting commands. He pushed them away and headed for the command tent. Vec met him at the entrance. "The trial is over," the commander said quietly. "Wasn't a trial," Rourke said. "It was a test." Vec's eyes narrowed. "Of what?" Rourke stepped past him without answering. Inside, he dropped a small item on the table, a cracked Vrexy scope lens. No words. Just the sound of something ending. Later, alone in his quarters, Rourke unslung his rifle, cleaned it, set it aside. From a pouch, he took the etched Vrexy bullet and set it beside his tally marks. He didn't label it. Didn't need to. Outside, the jungle breathed again. But now it whispered a different name. Not Rookie. Ghost.